Every Tuesday at this time, we're joined by our friend Jeff Howe from The Athletic, NFL Insider. Jeff, as always, we appreciate you joining us on this day, my friend. We were just talking about Trey Lance and Jimmy G. And Jeff, let me ask you this question. Mike Silver came out with a story on Sunday. And according to Mike, several people, players and coaches, told him behind closed doors, so to speak, not on the record, but, told him that they felt like Jimmy G, they were better with Jimmy G than Trey Lance. Now, that doesn't shock me, but does the timing of it surprise you as an insider, somebody who talks to players and coaches, that somebody or multiple people would go to Silver literally hours after Trey Lance just broke his ankle and would say that, and allow that to be leaked publicly?
No, that's not overly shocking. Again, you would expect them to have that sentiment because a lot of guys in that locker room have won some big games with Garoppolo at quarterback. And, just a week earlier, and again, we talked about this last week, I don't use that game in the monsoon as a referendum on Trey Lance's career or anything like that. But, a week earlier, the offense looked suspect because, a large part because of the weather, and it was Trey Lance's third career start. I'll say this until I'm blue in the face. It doesn't matter how high you are on a quarterback. When he's coming out of the draft or he's young or he's unproven, you don't know what you're going to get until you see it consistently enough on the field in game situations. So, I would be more surprised if there were guys in the Niners locker room who didn't have that type of feeling.
Do you think this changes the 49ers plans big picture at the quarterback position, or is it just we pick up the Trey Lance plan a year from now?
I think they have to pick up the Trey Lance plan a year from now. Just look at everything they invested into him. But it certainly makes things interesting. And I've got a story coming out on this topic either tomorrow or Thursday. So I'm kind of knee deep into the Garoppolo-Lance dynamic. But I think it's really, really interesting because that unknown, you were expecting to have that unknown going into year two, and they were comfortable with that. They expected growing pains and the roller coaster type of season that you would get out of any young quarterback. But now you're bringing it into year three, and that's going to make a front office or a coaching staff just a little more uneasy because by that point, given everything that you've invested, you wanted to have a clear understanding of what his development was looking like, and you're putting that on hold for longer than you really wanted to. Now, the other side is, let's say Jimmy Garoppolo goes out and plays really well and he stays healthy and the Niners get back to the NFC Championship game. What does that make the Niners say, hey, you know what, maybe we should give Garoppolo another run at this, and they give him whatever a competitive contract offer is. It could be a multi-year deal. That would be aggressive and maybe unconventional given, again, the investment that you've already made in Trey Lance. But then if you're Garoppolo, you sit there and say, well, do I want this contract with them because it's inevitable still that they're going to try to eventually go to Lance? So it's such a cloudy picture, and it's got to be uneasy on the front office because of the investments they've made in both guys.
Jeff Howe with us. Jeff, you just said you're knee deep in this story. Looking at the game plan on Sunday before Lance's injury, 12 runs, 3 passes. We heard from other reporters / guys that were once in the league, like Mike Lombardi, coming out and saying that Shanahan wanted Mac Jones instead of Trey Lance. What is your understanding of that situation? Was Kyle Shanahan fully behind that pick? And do you think he was fully behind Lance even going into this year?
I don't know exactly if there was a split, if it was consensus or unanimous. Obviously they're going to say that it was, and maybe there was. I also do know that at one point in the draft process, it was inferred to Mac Jones that it was going to be him. I just don't know if that's, there was some poker being played. I don't know what the dynamic was there, but I have some theories on the topic, but I'm not going to just start throwing stuff against the wall. It's not really my style. But look, I think, Mac Jones would have been a really good pick for that offense. And I still, I'm not, I know we'll continue to have this conversation for the next year now because of the circumstances of Lance's injury. I'm not going to go back on the amount of hype that I had on Trey Lance going into the draft. I still think his potential is through the roof. But everything that happened Sunday is extremely unfortunate.
Throughout the Jimmy Garoppolo era, now it's 2.0 of the Jimmy Garoppolo era, but we've always pointed at Kyle Shanahan's play calling and the way that he runs an offense and said, well, he's doing that based on the limitations that Jimmy Garoppolo has. But then he gets Trey Lance, who has the big arm. He also has his limitations, but one of them is not throwing the ball deep. And we hardly saw that. And we obviously saw a very run-heavy centric offense called by Kyle Shanahan. Have we had it wrong all this time? Was he calling an offense based on Jimmy G, or is that just Kyle Shanahan's offense?
I think it's Shanahan's offense, and more than anything, I kind of read into when you're a really good offensive mind, whether you're Sean McVay or Shanahan or Josh McDaniels or whatever, one of the main components, it doesn't matter what it looks like on the field, what the plays look like, all this other stuff. The most fundamental component is you have to play to your player's strength. And of course, that starts at quarterback. So you have to make sure that, Trey Lance, through a game and a quarter, he was doing the things that were going to make him most comfortable within that offensive structure. So what you saw through 5 quarters, again, let's remove the injury from the equation. If Lance continued playing, I would have expected this offense to evolve and look starkly different in November or December than it would have in the first couple weeks of September.
Right. Jeff Howe is with us from the Athletic, Cattles and Ramie, Sactown Sports. Let's jump to the Raiders, Jeff. They start the season 0-2, a ridiculous collapse against the Cardinals on Sunday in overtime. How much pressure do you think will start to build on McDaniels early here if they don't get out of the gates a little bit quicker the next few weeks?
I don't think it's going to get to that point. Now, they've had 2 incredibly tough losses to stomach. One of them when Derek Carr just really didn't play well in the opener, a game that they had multiple chances to win, and the turnovers, the recklessness with the ball, that they gave that game away to an extent too. And then this is one of those losses when you give up a lead like that under those circumstances. That's a really tough one for a locker room to deal with too. And their schedule doesn't get a whole lot easier. So, but I'm not, I think because McDaniels has matured so much, and I've seen it. I've seen the maturation put into practice. I don't think that this is all of a sudden going to slip away from him so fast and turn into another Denver situation. It's a completely different phase of his life. Now, granted, like the media speculation will always be there. It'll always be prevalent. And given the nature of everything that happened in Denver, the spotlight that he's had on him for a decade plus because of that, I think it's going to be, some people are going to reach for that type of angle, but I'm telling you, McDaniels is in such a better place right now. And I don't see this being a pressure type of situation in year one. I think this is an organization that, they expect to win every year, but this is a group that I think is committed to the Ziegler and McDaniels plan long-term.
One more for you, Jeff. Are the Bills really this good? Because what we've seen in the first 2 weeks is just a dominant football team. And I thought the hype was a little bit too loud for that team coming into the season. And I'm going to have to eat my words very soon if they keep playing at this level.
Well, they're pretty damn good. And they have so much room for error because Josh Allen is just playing at such an incredibly high level. And then you've got like this defense that I think everybody kind of overlooks. And I was probably guilty of that too. The way their line is playing, adding Von Miller, the way that you can get after the quarterback, you're going to have other offenses that, I'm not necessarily Tennessee, but more higher powered passing offenses that are going to start to have to press a little bit because that you're going to have to go into a Buffalo game thinking that you've got to score 30 plus in order to give yourself a really good chance to win. So then you start taking chances. Maybe you start getting uncomfortable, like going for it on 4th and whatever, when against a different opponent you might not have. And when you do start doing things like that against a team that can generate the pass rush that they've had for the last couple of weeks, the secondary, if they get healthier and better down the stretch, you start to look at potential turnovers and stuff like that. So, but right now, they're playing at an incredibly high level. They're in a situation where it's like, they're going to be there at the end as long as they stay healthy.
We got about a minute left, Jeff. Quickly, you covered Tom Brady for a long time. somewhat of a different approach here, missing training camp, weeks of training camp, and not being around on Wednesdays, reportedly. What do you think's going on with Brady?
This is, he's reached a point in his career, and this started to go into last season too, where it's so much more difficult for him to mentally recharge in the off season than it used to be. And he needs that mental break. And my understanding is the Wednesday stuff is they kind of just want to give him more of a physical break. But the off season, again, he's going through a phase in his career that's unprecedented. And, when you were younger, it was a whole lot easier to mentally recharge for another season.
Oh, yeah.
It's just he's got the self-awareness to know that, hey, I can't just turn it on as quickly as I used to be able to. So that was a big part of this offseason.
Great stuff, Jeff. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good week.
You too. There goes Jeff Howe of The Athletic. The Bills defense. I drafted him in fantasy football.
It's a very good defense.
I was ready for that.
It's a very good defense.